Hello everyone and welcome to my talk through of Act 2 Scene 1 of The Merchant of Venice. So I'm hoping you're going to find this way a little bit more relaxing than the way we've been going through them before the holidays, as obviously you're off for the next 2 weeks currently. So I've decided to do it this way so you can go a little bit more at your own pace. So what I've done for you is I've annotated the copy of Merchant of Venice. I'll do this as we go on the electronic copy here, and then I will talk you through, pop it on a video, and then you can go through at your own pace and ask me any questions that you have, rather than trying to keep up with me whilst I go through it on video and not knowing how long you're taking. You can pause me this time. Okay, so we start in a room in Portia's house, so we've gone back to Portia. We start with a flourish of cornets in the stage directions. Cornets essentially would signal the importance of the prince. Okay, they weren't used for lesser people, so we immediately know someone important's about to enter the room. Right, our first speech from the Prince of Morocco. He says, "Mislike me not for my complexion, the shadowed livery of the burnished sun." He immediately anticipates racism and prejudice when he comes into the room because he is black. So again, this plays into the theme of racism and intolerance that we've seen thus far in Merchant of Venice. We've seen it in what Portia said earlier in her speech in Act 1, Scene 2. As well as the way people behave towards Shylock in Act 1, Scene 3. So we have already seen it a little bit in Merchant of Venice. And the fact that it's the first thing that comes up here and it's the first thing he then says to Portia shows us that he obviously has been impacted by racism in the past, which is why he is immediately anticipating people's reaction. He uses quite grandiloquent, that's my new favourite word, everybody, language here. Okay, the shadowed livery of the burnished sun. He uses it the entire way through. Grandiloquent means pompous or extravagant in language or manner. He's trying to impress Portia, okay, especially because he's anticipating some sort of reaction, I think, from Portia. He's trying to essentially impress her, to show her that he's educated, that he's not necessarily like other men. We then continue to see that he's educated. He refers to Phoebus's fire, scares Thor's the icicles, and let us make an incision for your love, he says. That's a reference to Apollo. Phoebus is another name for Apollo in Greek and Roman mythology. So we immediately see, like the others who are all very intelligent when they talk, he is using those references to mythology as well. Then he says to prove whose blood is reddest, his or mine. He's reducing everyone to red blood. He's promoting equality, essentially. Everyone has red blood inside, regardless of what their skin colour looks like. Okay, so he's trying to say to Portia that he is the exact same as anyone who is Caucasian, because everyone's blood runs the same through their veins. Blood being red has other connotations as well. Of passion, of fertility. It also reminds us of the flesh promise that was made between Shylock and Antonio in the previous scene. Okay, and then he says, by my love I swear the best regarded virgins of our clime have loved it too. He is desired because he is brave by all the best regarded, the most beautiful virgins from his home country as well. So he's exceptionally desired. He's a little bit boastful here because, again, when he's trying to impress Portia. But then he says, I would not change this hue except to steal your thoughts, my gentle queen. Some real contrast here. Like, sorry, it's really far away, but there's a conflict between his confidence, he wouldn't change himself, he wouldn't change the colour of his skin, and concern about discrimination. So he would change the colour of his skin if he could steal Portia's thoughts, and he already refers to her as my gentle queen, so he's anticipating that he's going to be successful in wooing her. Okay, so there's that conflict between confidence and kind of concern and fear about discrimination, and that reminds us of Shylock as well, okay, the way Shylock was acting in the previous scene. Portia then speaks and says, in terms of choice, I am not solely led by nice direction of a maiden's eyes. Besides, the lottery of my destiny bars me the right of voluntary choosing. She's reminding us that she cannot choose a suitor herself. Okay, she's bound by the terms of the riddle her father has laid out before her. But if my father had not scanted me and hedged me by his wit. She's quite critical of her dead father here. Okay, so when she says that he has scanted her and hedged her, she's talking about the restriction, the limitations that have been placed upon her. It's not a particularly nice way of phrasing it, so she sounds very critical here. And we know, obviously, that she's critical of the patriarchy and the way that she cannot make her own decisions about her future, and she is essentially being forced into marriage by her dead father, so she's still being ruled by her father from beyond the grave, and we know she's critical of that already. Yourself, renowned prince, that stood as fair as any comer I've looked on yet for my affection. Oh, she sounds like she's being so nice to him, so polite to him, but we know that's a veiled insult, because in her previous speech, in Act 1, Scene 2, she had talked about all the suitors she had seen before and essentially picked out all of the problems with them. So if we compare them to all the other suitors, and this prince stands as fair, then she's essentially saying that he's not worthy of her either. Okay, so sounding kind, sounding polite, but really is not being. Okay. Then the Prince of Morocco says, even for that I thank you, therefore I pray you, lead me to the caskets to try my fortune. By this cimeter that slew the Sophian, a Persian prince, that won 3 fields of Sultan Suleiman, I would outstare the sternest eyes that look, outbrave the heart most daring on the earth, pluck the young sucking cubs from the she-bear, yea, mock the lion when he roars for prey, to win thee, lady. Okay, so here he's kind of talking about his bravery again. He's kind of trying to impress her, but it's also a little bit more comical than that. So depending on who is playing the Prince of Morocco at this particular point, they can play it very comically because it's such grandiose language. It's such kind of boastful language. So it could be portrayed in a really comical manner. Okay, and often is. And then he says, but alas the while, if Hercules and Lycus play at dice, which is the better man, the greater throw may turn by fortune from the weaker hand. This is a metaphor talking about how this is all based on luck, not skill, alas. So Lycus was Hercules' servant who delivered to him a poisoned shirt that eventually killed him. But not before Hercules flung Lycus into the sea, where he transformed into a piece of flint. So Morocco is essentially comparing the weak Lycus and the strong Hercules, saying that in this case, luck is going to decide the winner instead of strength or worth or skill. Okay, and then so is Alcides beaten by his page. Alcides is another name for Hercules. And so may I, blind fortune leading me, miss that which one unworthier may attain, and die with grieving. So blind fortune is actually, again, another reference to Roman mythology. Fortuna was a Roman goddess of fortune, and she was always depicted as having a blindfold on, so talking about how luck is blind. Portia then says, you must take your chance, and either not attempt to choose at all, or swear before you choose, if you choose wrong, never to speak to a lady afterwards in way of marriage, therefore be advised. So this shows us exactly how mad, to be perfectly honest, the riddles are, the consequences of the riddle. So not only is Portia obviously tied to the outcome of the riddle, if someone guesses correctly, then they will marry her, but the suitor who tries to win Portia's hand has consequences too. He can't speak to a lady afterwards in way of marriage. He must promise never to get married. Okay, so never to try and woo another woman if they lose the riddle. So that's a really big risk for the suitors to take. Remember, at that point in time as well, men, especially those of great wealth, would be wanting to produce an heir, and essentially losing this riddle would result in them not being able to do that, at least not legitimately. So it's a really, really big risk. And here it's proving the prince's valiance, his bravery, his willingness to take the risk, okay? Also explains why maybe the other suitors weren't willing to take that risk going forward. Morocco, nor will not, come bring me unto my chance. So he's being very brave. Okay, and then we end, good fortune then to make me blessed or cursed among men. Stopping the scene here adds to the suspense. It's so dramatic of Shakespeare, because obviously we then don't know what happens. It's building that suspense for the audience because we are now stopping and moving on. Okay, let me know if you have any questions about this scene. It's nice and short, and I will have explained everything to you before as well, so you should know what you're doing next.